You face battles most never fought, pain, struggle, adversity. But here, we use that as fuel. This is the Battle Harder podcast, where we motivate, educate, and inspire warriors of life, veterans, survivors, leaders. We share stories and strategies to turn pain into progress. Here's your host, Coach Rob. Let's lock in and battle harder.
What's up, everybody? This is your host, Coach Rob, here at the Battle Harder podcast, where I hope to motivate, educate, and inspire you to become the best version of yourself. This episode is near and dear to my heart because, as you know, I love talking to my veterans and my veteran community and my first responder community. And as someone who has PTSD, major depressive disorder, anxiety, social anxiety, we're talking to another veteran that has dealt with and gone through similar things. And we're going to talk today a little bit about those invisible wounds and how he deals with them. But his story is like most of the people I get to feature on this show. It's not about being stuck or staying stuck. It's about finding your calm, your peace within the chaos and reclaiming your power. So I'd like to welcome to the show, Cole Grace. Cole, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be on the show.
So before we get into, like I say, the meat of the episode or all the bad stuff, just give us a little background of who you are and what you do.
Well, currently, I've had a lot of changes in my life. That's what helps with dealing with this stuff. But right now, I live in Costa Rica. I just wrote a book called Internal is Greater Than External, Calming the Chaos Within. And now I'm on podcast trying to normalize the conversation around mental health, and especially men's mental health, and more specifically veterans. And
it's definitely hard, and there's still that stigma, and I hate that word, but there's still the overwhelming darkness of you're not allowed to talk about it. You're not allowed to say you have issues or have problems, and it's hard, right? So how are you finding, from writing your book and everything you're trying to advocate on, like me, how is that going as far as having those tough conversations with the right people?
It's going well. It was hard to get started because I projected a lot of things and had a lot of negative thoughts about being vulnerable and how people were going to react. And in reality, they didn't end up reacting that way. I've gotten a really good response from talking on podcasts and people who've read the book. So I had to deal with a lot of my own internal negative self-talk and limiting beliefs in order to move forward. But it was more the battle of myself than any other external roadblock.
And everybody that's listening to this, that's what I want you to hear, because interesting enough with my past guests, whether veteran or non-veteran, it's all that battle within, and we all have that low self-worth or self-doubt, and we think everybody's going to look at us weird if we say, hey, I'm not feeling well. And the difficult conversation is just having the conversation. Once you open up, people realize, oh, crap, this guy's serious, he needs help, he wants to change. And then your support system starts to try to help you and try to be there for you. And most of the time, you're not judged for having mental health issues. Everybody has some sort of trauma. Everybody's gone through something. We're all the same in that aspect, but where we're not the same is the people that decide to fight through it and deal with it. So just give us a little background, Cole, on your time in service and what you kind of did or what happened that really started to give you that mental health struggle or the things or demons you had to deal with, so to speak.
All right, yeah. Childhood was not bad, but it was littered with micro traumas or little T traumas. And so my parents divorced when I was 4. My dad is sober now, but he was an alcoholic and a drug addict. And so 0 to 4 was pretty tumultuous. And then my mom, single mom, moving around a lot from 4 to 8. And then life kind of stabilized and we were middle class. I was playing sports and stuff like that, but I was not really dealing with any of the abandonment issues or the trauma that I had experienced, because it didn't seem like it was that bad. I was never beaten or sexually abused, so it didn't seem bad. And then after high school, I wanted to go to a university with my friends in Northern Michigan University. And my mom wasn't going to pay for it. She said she'd pay for me to go to like community college, but I really wanted to go there. So I joined the Army National Guard as a combat engineer. I was 17 and I liked to blow things up. So we went that route, and they had a big bonus. And then it was actually before 9/11, and then it was like July. 9/11 happened. I hadn't been to boot camp yet, so I could have opted out, but I went to boot camp. And then it wasn't until 2005 that I was deployed. And in 2005, I was deployed to Najaf, Iraq first, and then we went to Ramadi, Iraq. And our job was route clearance, so we did IED search and disposal. It was before EOD was really on the scene. For the first 6 months of my tour, I was the demo team. So we had a vehicle called a Husky that would find the IEDs with metal detection panels and signal jammers and all that stuff. And then a Buffalo would pull up behind it with a big hydraulic arm and would dig where the Husky marked, and then it would separate the rounds from the trigger. And then I would get out and I would collect the trigger for evidence and then put a C4 charge on whatever rounds to blow it in place or in the ditch. And then we'd move on to the next one. Or I'd have to go back and check to make sure everything blew up, and then we'd go back to the next one. And so you're exposed. I've been sniped at while I'm working on bombs, and very high stress. The other job we did was convoy security, where we would escort usually supply trucks from base to base, and I would be part of the 2 Hummer element or the 2 gun truck element that would ride a kilometer out in front to set off any ambushes and look for signs of IEDs and to be able to halt the convoy.
For those in the civilian world, can you explain to them kind of what a combat engineer is?
Yeah, we're like, I guess the best description I've heard that's simple is infantry with explosives. So we're trained to do infantry, and we also use explosives to breach obstacles or to remove obstacles, whether that be minefields, improvised explosive devices in the road, or if we're emplacing our own Constantine wire or our own type defenses. And so the platoon was called Assault and Obstacle. So we would either assault their obstacles or build obstacles for them to block them.
And this was in the Army, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
A lot of like blowing up bridges and things like that too.
Yeah, so to paint a picture to you guys, because I've done convoy security too. Luckily, I didn't have to do it in Iraq. I did it in Egypt. But, at the time that both of us was in service, I was in Operation Iraqi Freedom. You were getting, shot at all the time. You didn't know if there was a bomb, an IED in the road. You didn't know if they would put a kid in the road. You didn't know, so you're always hyper vigilant. You're always freaking out. You're always in a high stress adrenaline dump, and it's not a fun place to be on every run you do, which is all the time, because especially if you have to escort supplies or a dignitary or whatever, this is not fun stuff. So with everything that happened and you went through in the military, what eventually led you to getting out? What happened?
So in the last 90 days of the tour that we were on, they were looking for ways to more safely dispose of the IEDs rather than having people exposed. They came up with a vehicle called the NERF system, neutralizing IEDs with radio frequency. And the idea was to basically spray microwaves at the ground so that the metal blasting cap would react as if you put metal in a microwave. And then that would explode the IED. Nobody has to get out. They just drive this thing down the road and blow up IEDs. Well, the vehicle was massive. In order to create that radio frequency, they had to have like a fission or fusion generator. I don't know which one. I'm not an expert in that, but they're hauling around this massive generator, and they can't go down the roads that really have the IEDs, the dangerous roads. They have to stay on the main supply route. And within an hour, usually that generator would overheat. And so I'm 22 years old, and this is the last 90 days, the last 3 months of my tour. Running these missions seemed easy, seemed cake. Like I would take that. Okay, for the last 90 days, this is what I'm gonna do. All right. But when we would go under overpasses with this vehicle that didn't have a weapon system on top of it, and so they had us ride like we would with convoy security out in front of it. They said the safe distance was 500 meters on the radio frequency, and then I took another 500-meter standoff in case they did set off a bomb. And so we stayed 1,000 meters out in front, but I didn't have a rangefinder. I didn't have like a Geiger counter or anything. I just kind of was eyeballing it. And there was times where I could feel my body heating up and hit the top of the Hummer to punch out further. And in doing then when they go over observation posts, friendly observation posts on like overpass or sniper positions, they would shut down the machine. But I mean, it made sense because they got closer than 1,000 meters. So we would joke about it, like, oh, it's cool that we ride out here, but they shut it down every time they go under the overpass. But anyways, after I returned home, or actually when I was over there during that 90 days, I had this really extreme episode of extreme stomach pain, nausea, and vomiting. And I had that a couple times, and they attributed it to like dehydration. I remember they almost like were going to get me in trouble because they didn't think I was drinking enough water or something, my
Wow.
team leader. And so I was like, no, I don't know what's going on. It's not, that's not the reason. But luckily that was on my record. And then when I got home, I continued to have the episodes. I still have them to this day. And my gallbladder was like a porcelain gallbladder, they call it. And usually that's like a middle-aged woman that has a history of gallstones.
Oh, wow.
And I had never had gallstones in my life, and I was really young and in good shape, so it was odd. And continued to have problems since then. But for 2 years, so I got back in 2006. For 2 years, they thought it was like ulcers or, psychosomatic, like all in my head. And I was on various levels of disability, and then they medically discharged me from the military in 2008, and I worked a couple, like a pizza cook, and then a different job. And then I went back to school on vocational rehabilitation program and in IT for a more flexible schedule. And then I ended up working back for U.S. Army TACOM out of Detroit, and they're like logistics for the Army. And I moved up the ranks in the 7 years that I worked there, but I was still having the stomach problems, and this was before they knew that it was going to be permanent. And so we still thought that there was hope. I was working on diet. I had the gallbladder removed and some different things, but I continued to have these episodes, and I'd have to work from home a lot and use telework. And
So I'm assuming that you're going to tell me it was from the radiation, correct?
yeah, these episodes, I've never been confirmed 100%, but they gave me 100% disability, permanent and total, through the military. They retired me medically from the federal service. And so it's for multiple things like PTSD, stomach issues, sleep apnea, and some other things.
And I want to touch on that a little bit. And I think every veteran, what's crazy is like every veteran, no matter what branch, we all face a lot of the same things with the medical system while you're in service being broken, the medical system while you're out of service being broken. And a lot of times they'll tell you, so for like me, I got out due to knee injuries from being a military police officer and fighting people and arresting people and everything I had to do. But every time I went to the doctor, oh, your knees aren't messed up, you're fine. And I'm like, only you know when there's something wrong with yourself. And you go back to the doctor and you tell these people this, and they don't believe you, and then things get worse. And then they're like, oh, now that things are worse, we're going to take care of it. And that's not the right answer. But there's so many of us veterans that are dealing with that if these issues were found before, like, I don't know about you, but I know for me, like, I'm a 90% disabled vet. I'd rather be healthy than have the disabilities if they would have just caught this stuff, when I brought it to their attention versus, oh, well, now we realize that you needed knee surgery. And so here's, 20%, have a good life. It's very frustrating thing. So you got out, and then, from our talks, something happened with like addiction and stuff. Like what happened after you got out of service? Because I know for a lot of us, when we get out, we lose everything overnight, right? That community, our purpose, our path, everything's like just gone. And it's a very scary place for a lot of us at times. So talk about that for a little bit.
Well, just to touch on the point that you were making about the doctors and stuff. One thing I learned to do is to go to the private side. And if your doctor believes that it's caused due to service, have your private doctor write you a nexus letter. You can look that up. And that is a lot more strong in your case for disability when they do it that way. And it takes a lot of they can't really mess you around as much. But as far as the addiction goes, so I had these stomach episodes, and what would happen is extreme stomach pain, which would make me nauseous eventually, and then I would have intractable vomiting later. If you treat the pain, and then the nausea will go away. The pain's usually driving the nausea. And so they did that for a while. I could just go to the emergency room when I needed to. They would treat it, and then I would go home. And I don't have a prescription for anything. I don't want one. I'm good. Then the opiate crisis happened, and the pendulum swung really, really far the other way, and they were really restrictive on pain medicine. So if I would go into the hospital, they would try to just treat the nausea and not treat the pain, or they would try to like knock me out and give me like antipsychotics and like Benadryl and this cocktail to try to put me to sleep. But it would just make me like really delirious and woozy, and I'm still in pain. And then they would send me home. And eventually, I was suicidal, being in pain for that long and not having any option. And I went and started finding it on the streets and self-medicating. I would like get Pedialyte to replicate the IV type thing, and then I would have pain medicine, and I could get prescribed Zofran. So I would have basically what they would give me in the emergency room. But I eventually started to justify taking it when I wasn't sick. Like, oh, I worked out in the yard for a long time, my back hurts. Like, you don't need a 10 milligram like narco or whatever, but I could justify that I did. And then I became physically dependent eventually. And I would have to take maintenance dose, every few hours in order. It wasn't really high, but I would have to do that to not be sick. And then when I would get sick, I'd have to take more to take care of the pain. So it was starting to go downhill pretty bad, but I was working for the government. I was making good money, paying all my bills. I was in school, getting like a 4.0 or high honors. And so I could easily justify that everything's fine. It's not a problem. I'm not taking them to the point where I'm nodding out at work or not doing my stuff. So I'm fine. But I wasn't. I was looking for external things to say that I'm good instead of my internal being good. So like, I have a good job, I have money, this, that, the other, that's all external. But my internal world was a mess, and I wasn't grounded. I didn't, the PTSD, the thoughts, like just sitting there with my own thoughts was not fun. That's why I was really highly productive at work and really highly productive in school, because I could distract myself. And so, yeah, that was a rough time. And then eventually I ended up going to rehab because I couldn't stop. I knew that I was like
Did something like, did you just decide like, hey, I know this isn't right, or did something like happen in your life that forced you into rehab?
Yeah, I'll be vulnerable and tell you. So I had a stomach episode, and I had to take more pills than usual to stop it. And I ended up taking like a few, and it didn't help it. So I went to the hospital, and I was having the suicidal ideations. And I had asked somebody to take the key to my gun safe, and then that came out while I was in the emergency room, and they wanted to like admit me.
Like Baker Act you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my parents were from the other side of the state, were over there. And so I had to like, in order to not really get admitted, I had to promise that I was already scheduled to go to the rehab. And then I had to also, my parents had to agree to take my guns. And the doctor agreed to not, that they wouldn't admit me to the psych ward. So that was the catalyst of that. I had signed up to go to the rehab already because I knew there was a problem. I had gotten sick and had to take quite a few to recover from it, and was having to take them every day. So I was I didn't want it to go where I've seen it go with other people.
And, once again, not just the veteran first responder community, but anybody dealing with trauma or some sort of issue, thanks for being vulnerable. I mean, I've had a gun in my hand before and thought I was going to end my life. I've had ideations where I figure I was just going to take a bunch of pills and go to sleep. But there is this common problem that I don't know how we fix within the VA where, once again, even with medication, so, for me, I've been having trouble sleeping, and I've been fighting the VA for about 6 months now on this, and I finally got a different psych doctor who actually decided to listen to me and was like, oh, shit, maybe we need to prescribe you something else. But they put you on this controlled substance, so they put me on clorazepam, which is a controlled substance, but they were never giving me enough pills to last a month. And then, So I would go to try to renew my prescription. They're like, well, it's a controlled substance. You can't get any more. So I'm like, how the fuck am I supposed to sleep then? Because you're not giving me what you prescribed to me in the first place. And there's a lot of veterans dealing with this. So, for the civilian community, I always try to highlight the struggles that we go through. Not every veteran has issues. Not every veteran is disabled. Not every veteran has trauma in service, but a lot of us do. And it's not this celebration of service or of victory, or like we're warriors, but we're warriors who are hurting, and we're trying to figure out how to get back in the fight, and it's not easy. And that's why Cole speaks on this stuff. This is why I'm speaking on this stuff, because if we can be vulnerable for you, then maybe if you need help, if you don't get it from us, you'll get it from somewhere. So after you got a rehab, like what did you start doing to like essentially change your life? Like what helped you? What worked for you? What are you currently doing?
All right. When I got out of rehab, before rehab, I had worked on my combat stuff because that was obvious to me. Big T traumas. So I worked on a lot of my combat trauma. And then that's when I had thought, like, I'm good. I worked on my combat trauma. I got a good job. I'm making good money. Da, 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 da. And when I was in rehab, I read a book called Unlearn Your Pain and Depression by Dr. Howard Schubner. And the pages were jumping off the book. It's like mind-body connection stuff and your core beliefs that you form in your younger years. And I was blown away. I was like, oh my God, that's me. I'm a people pleaser, nice guy because of abandonment issues. And I didn't really ever give much credence to those younger childhood things because they weren't, in my mind, like disarming bombs. So once I realized that, I started to really dig into self-help books and like trying to understand the neuroscience behind the brain and negative thought patterns. And what I discovered was that a lot of times we chase external things to try to fill the hole or try to make ourselves happy, chasing the job, the title, status, fame, all of these things. And then we think that's going to make us feel better. Even moving to Costa Rica, that was something that I learned. I moved here and then I got depressed here. And then I felt worse because I'm depressed in paradise. And I'm like, you're a piece of crap. Like you got everything you could want and you're still, depressed. So I realized that it doesn't matter. The external can change in an instant. And if you're chasing external things, it's going to be temporary happiness, but you're going to be chasing the next thing. And so working on the internal, trying to find like a grounded internal state of peace, then it doesn't matter what happens in the external, you're going to be okay. And when the external is good, you're going to enjoy it more.
Right.
And so I started looking at negative beliefs, thought patterns, negative self-talk, and triggers. And when I find those areas, I try to map them back to, why, for example, road rage. Well, I did convoy security. So when somebody cuts me off, it makes me feel like I'm like somebody's driving
Right.
a bomb into my convoy. So I need to kill you. And it's a very heightened, like, and you can justify it because that person's an idiot for cutting you off. But like the level at which I would get upset and the chemicals released into my body ready to go is a problem. So
Right.
that's where I identified, okay, now when I identify something like that, I use a positive affirmation like during the trigger, and I do it in the mornings, positive affirmations, gratitude, and I have a mission statement. Those are 3 things that I use. But the positive affirmation would be, I'm not in Iraq anymore, or you're safe. And so because I have this belief that I'm not safe, or I have this feeling that and that's what's making the trigger go crazy. So by doing that, and it doesn't happen right away. It's like going to the gym and you come home, you're not going to lift up your shirt and see a 6-pack. But with time, you're going to start to notice a change. And it's a learned neural pathway from me being in convoy security, and it's built around life or death. So it's a very ingrained neural pathway. And in order to change that with positive affirmations, I'm going to have to do that constantly, a lot. And it took me like almost a year to get to where I didn't have the feeling anymore. I could recognize it, shut it down, remind myself I'm safe. And then eventually I could not react, but I'd still have the feeling like, ooh, and and the thoughts. But with time, it eventually deadened and went away. I'd be able to recognize it quicker, calm myself down quicker, get out of fight or flight. And, so I when I identify those areas, I make a positive affirmation around the negative belief. Because a lot of times if you have a negative belief, your brain looks for like confirmation bias. It looks for examples to prove that belief right. And that's where the self-sabotage happens. So if you have a belief that you're not worthy, then when you get close to success, watch how you self-sabotage, or you don't actually get it. Or if you do get it, you do something to mess it up. And I used to do that all the time. And then you blame it on the other thing. But really, it lies in this subconscious belief that I'm not worthy of this. So my brain won't allow that incongruence. And the other thing is I watch my expectations, because when my expectation and reality deviate, that's when I notice a lot of problems. And so I have to make sure, is this a realistic expectation? Like around my stepdad or around my dad, he wouldn't show up and he'd say he's going to do something and wouldn't do it. And then I would get really upset. Well, I'm expecting him to do something that I know he's not going to do. So if I adjust my expectation, then if he does show up, I'm okay, cool. But if he doesn't, I already knew he wasn't going to show up. So little tricks on ways to flip the negative thought patterns, because what you think comes into reality, because of, like we were talking about with your brain has a reticular activating system, which is like the filter for reality. And if you have negative beliefs, it's going to filter and show you all those same things that you're thinking and looking for. It's going to show you those examples. But if you start getting into the practice of doing gratitude every morning, and you have a mission statement, and you do positive affirmations, you're starting to train your reticular activating system to look for positive things. And it changes your reality. And you can reframe some things. Like if we get a flat tire, it's a flat tire, but how you react to it can really make the difference. If you're going to let that take your whole day down the tube and then just be mad and blame everything on the fact, well, if I didn't get the flat, or you can be like, maybe this saved me from getting an accident down the road, the burnt toast theory or something. Or it's not that big of a deal. I'm just going to change the tire. Thank God I didn't get in an accident. So being able to reframe these things and not take that negative loop is really, because 95% of like the decisions and stuff we make are subconscious. Only like 5% are conscious. And so the awareness of your subconscious programming is essential. And then when you find something you don't like, you got to reprogram it.
Definitely.
And a lot of times, yeah.
And guys, so Cole just basically broke down my whole coaching process and everything. Like, so this is why I love this stuff, because everything he just said is what led me to be Coach Rob. It's what led me to get out of that dark, deep hole. And the thing is, you have to practice everything. You can't just focus on one thing. It's a complete holistic approach. And it's a beautiful thing. So, and we all in this space kind of deal with the same way. We just have different terms. And if you go back to my episode with Chris Janey, who is a veteran, but he's also an actual neuroscientist, I asked him on the podcast on camera, I said, listen, if I tell myself I'm going to have a bad day, am I subconsciously telling myself I'm going to have a bad day? And he's like, yes. So the same thing, if I tell myself I'm going to have a good day, I'm probably going to have a good day. And the idea behind my coaching, what I talk about, everything I do, is stacking more good days, more wins, being 1% better each and every day, opposed to being negative all the time. Look, let me ask you, Cole, did your trauma go away?
No.
Mine didn't either. I still have trauma. I still have bad days. I was having a little bit of some mental health issues today before this episode. But the difference is I'm more apt to deal with it because emotional regulation is so important. And just like Cole, I'm the kind of guy, if you cut me off, I would chase you. If you got in my personal space, I would push you. If you mess up my order, I would yell at you. And it wasn't that I was an angry, big, mean asshole. I didn't have no self-worth, self-love, no control over what I was feeling. I didn't understand why I was angry. I didn't understand why I was hurting. And I would put that out into the public and into the universe. And essentially, I'd always have a bad day. And then I'd be the guy, why me? Why is this happening? Why does everything suck? And it wasn't that I'm being punished for whatever. It was just the fact that I needed to take that energy, and instead of putting it into being cut off, I needed to put it into building my business. I needed to put it into being a better husband. I needed to put it into being a better father. So you have to, it's that old saying, like, control what you can and not worry about what you can't. If you can control the things that you can immediately control and realize that I'm fine, it's okay, and not worry about the person that cut you off. If it doesn't put you in an accident, if it doesn't cause any damage, take a deep breath, pause, say an affirmation, I'm okay, life is good, whatever, and go on about your day. And surprisingly, that and the gratitude work alone, I've said on every podcast, before I go to bed, I say 3 things that I'm thankful for every night, and when I wake up, I say it's going to be a good day. And just those 2 simple tips and tricks has completely changed my aspect of how good and how bad my days are. So with that being said, Cole, any other things, fitness, nutrition, things you use in your daily life to help you out?
Yeah, just tell the listeners, Coach Rob's on it, man. He's got a really good toolkit. Some other things that I do, I have a personal mission statement, and that lays out the roles that I have, like as a Christian man, as an author, as a speaker, whatever roles you play, father.
Can you share that with us?
Yeah, actually I can. and I'll open that up. It's more extensive than like a mission statement you'd think of for a business, but it's a good exercise to do, because when I ask myself these questions, like how do you want to show up, I really didn't really have a direction of where I was surprised, and I'm a process engineer. So when I ask people, why are you doing this? And they say, I don't know, because because it says so. I usually get upset. And then I found myself having that same answer. I was like, oh man. So my mission statement starts off with me as a Christian, and as I love God, God loves me. I serve God by being kind and obedient and spreading my light into this world in his name. The peace and calmness that I get from knowing God is what makes me different and draws people to me. I'm an independent, confident, humble man who does not need validation from outside sources. I live an amazing life and do the things that I want to do. I'm learning to surf, how to fish from shore, and exploring new places in Costa Rica. I'm not afraid to be alone. I'm not trying to impress anyone. I'm guarded on who I let into my life. I have qualifications beyond just beauty. I will finish writing the book on mental health. I will get permission for selling hot sauce in Costa Rica. I drive a new vehicle. I'm a high value man with purpose. My purpose is to continue healing and improving the quality of my life, then teach people how I did it. Teach them how to take control of and improve the quality of their lives. In doing this, I can share my testimony. I am a bold and courageous leader who is successful when he remains humble and in God's presence. I'm not reactive. You cannot throw me from my center because I can handle anything. I have boundaries and I'm not afraid to walk away. I'm accountable for my mistakes, repent for them, forgive myself, and introspect to understand why I made them. When I find insecurities or negative beliefs as the cause, I reprogram them.
Is this something that, so I'm learning something new today. I didn't even think about the power of a mission statement. That's pretty awesome. Is that something you read like as soon as you get up, before you go to bed? Like, how do you use that in your daily life?
Yes. So I read that daily. I read it when I get up to kind of set the course for my day and remind myself and I also use it when I'm going through it. Like when I'm having the suicidal ideations. Because a lot of times the question that comes up to me is why? Why are you fighting? Why are you just give up? But this answers the question, why? And then that paired with my gratitude journal, I'll read through that and I'll read my mission statement, and then I'll repeat my positive affirmations. I have a list of 10 of them that are 12 or now that I do daily, and I change them out here and there. But I'll read my mission statement when I'm going through it, and that helps me to answer those questions and battle any suicidal ideations that I have, and remind myself that it's temporary. And we're very mission driven as soldiers. So having this, sometimes I find myself being incongruent with it. And I'm like, but it gives me the reminder, and I can reset the course, give myself grace, and get back on track.
Man, I love that. And so I want the public to know that, as I tell you guys all the time, whenever you do anything, practicing gratitude, any form of journaling, any kind of asking God or the universe for what you want, writing stuff down, writing a mission statement, positive affirmations, one, it has to have purpose, and two, it has to have intent. You can't do any of this stuff without intent. You have to really take the time to dig deep within your soul, whether it's sit in silence, breath work, or just sit there for a few minutes and write things down with intent, because the intent is what shows us who we are, who we need to be, and what we can do. And everybody needs purpose. Without purpose, we're just lost. If we just walk around with our head up in the clouds, everybody needs some sort of purpose, whether you're the single mom, you're the police officer, the veteran, the dad, the stay-at-home, whatever. We have to have purpose. So before we close out the show, give us a little bit of, about your book, the background on that, and what's going on with that.
So the book, I started writing it when I got out of rehab, and I didn't want to put it out. I just felt a calling that I was supposed to do this and help other people. But I kept making excuses about negative self-talk. You're not a doctor. You're not a psychologist. You're not a neuroscientist. Who are you to be talking about this stuff? And so I had to use a lot of the tactics in my in my own book to overcome that. And I wrote almost all of it probably 10 years ago now, or in 2000, well, 8 years ago. And I didn't finish it. And I just kind of was like, well, that helped me to heal, and I don't need to release it. I don't need to be vulnerable. Worked through those things that we just talked about, and released it this year. And, it was a very freeing experience to be able to do it. And like I said, a lot of the projected response that I thought I was going to get, I got really good response, and been able to speak on podcasts and, really strengthen my purpose. And, when I'm going through things now, it's, my mission statement and what I'm doing is very important. So
do you find that, I mean, for me, every time I have a guest, every time I get on stage and speak, every time I write curriculum or do whatever in this realm of personal development, is that like therapeutic for you? Does it help in your healing journey?
Yes. Anytime I've had to like present or teach a subject, I go really in depth. And one of the concepts in the book is continual learning. And so even after writing the book, now doing these podcasts, I'm doing neuroscience research and figuring out, well, why does gratitude work? What's the science behind it? And a lot of different things that are a little deeper than I went in the book. And so now I'm able to speak about those things on podcasts, and it's therapeutic for me. There's still times like we were talking about where I still question things. I'm like, didn't get a lot of likes or not a lot of views. I wonder if anybody even cares, or if I'm being annoying by posting all these things. And then a veteran friend of mine shoots me a message out of the blue. He's never liked a video, commented on a video or anything. And he just says, what you're doing is really inspiring. Keep it up. And, that is just like, you never know who's watching, and just keep on your mission and do it because it's what you want to do. It's because it's right. Don't do it because of the outcome. Don't be so connected.
And guys, like, if you need to go back and like when you watch this, go back and rewind that part, because that's God literally showing you your path, your purpose. There's been times where with all this stuff, because building a business isn't easy. Most of you guys know I owned a gym. I lost that due to COVID, and that really took a hit on my soul and my mental health and everything. But now with this coaching, and I had to realize that God was preparing me to do something bigger and something better. A brick and mortar gym, I can only reach the people that come in my gym. As a personal development coach, I can reach the world. I can literally have conversations with Cole, who's in Costa Rica right now, talking to me. And besides through the podcast, we've never met. And essentially, he's already a brother to me, because not only is he a veteran, not only did he go through trauma, but we're both trying to advocate for you to have a better life and a better way. So those times where you don't, social media is a beast of a pain in the butt sometimes. And those times you don't get the likes, or the times you don't get the subscribers, or the times you don't think anybody's listening, there's always at least one person listening, and there's always at least one person that is resonating with what you say, and they're using your tools for help. So just keep going, because when you think everything is about to collapse and you're at that point that, hey, I'm going to give up, if you just take that last step, if you just get over that hill, if you just one more day, every day, one more day, eventually, like, all your work it's going to work out. It's going to happen. You're going to grow. You're going to get in front of the right person. Networking is huge. Get, in front of as many people as you possibly can. Cole does podcasts. I've done podcasts. I've probably been on 20 podcasts just by myself as a guest, not mentioning the people that I host to let them tell their stories. So, it's scary. Sometimes it's scary to get out of that house and talk to people and be vulnerable and say, look, I have mental health issues and this is how I dealt with them. But trust me, that's much better than being on the other end of just giving up and not seeing if you could grow, or you could create a purpose, or have a passion to do something bigger than what your life is. So take those key moments from God that says, hey, this is what you should be doing. And if you don't believe in God, then the key points from the universe, whatever you need to listen to, to resonate with you, to tell you that, hey, you're doing the right thing, do that. So, Cole, before I close out the show, I always like to ask my guests, what is your definition of turning pain into progress?
What we were just talking about, having a very negative self-image, and a lot of times the people that I think what they think about me, it's not like that. And I found that to be true, and that was limiting in me moving forward. And sorry, could you repeat that, the question?
What's your definition of turning pain into progress?
Oh, yeah. So in doing that, taking something that you've went through or are going through and bringing it from the dark to the light is what I believe is turning your pain into progress. If you can bring something from the dark into the light, it loses its power, its negative power, and it gains positive power for other people. Just being vulnerable and sharing your experience can just let somebody know that they aren't alone. You don't have to solve the problem.
That's awesome. And Cole, for those that want to reach out to you or get in touch with you, where can they find you?
I'm on YouTube. It's at cgrace21. You can find the book Internals Greater Than External, Calming the Chaos Within, on Amazon. Just search Cole Grace. And I'm also on Facebook and Instagram as Cole Grace. So you could follow there. I put public posts out sometimes of the shorts or the podcasts that I've been on and different things like that. And then I'm starting to restrict some of the personal ones to friends only, but follow me on either of those.
Guys, as usual, all those things will be linked in the show notes on the YouTube, so you can connect with Cole if you'd like to. Guys, Cole, I appreciate you for being on the show. What an amazing conversation. And guys, this has been another episode of the Battle Harder podcast. Remember to always be fit for battle. Thank you.
You've just heard another battle-tested conversation. Now it's time to take action. If this episode lit a fire in you, subscribe on Spotify, Apple, iHeart, or YouTube, so you never miss a moment that could change your life. Want to go deeper? Connect with Coach Rob at Battle Fitted Brand. Com for coaching, gear, and tools to help you turn your pain into progress. Remember, life will test you, but you're built to battle harder. Until next time, stay locked in, stay ready, and keep showing up.